Thanks for joining ITV's social media team. We are about to ask you some questions that have been sent in by our social media followers.
Yes.
What would be the one main thing, other than independence, that you would like to achieve if you won power?
I think for pretty much all of us in the SNP, it kind of ties in with what John Swinney said when he became leader of the party, which would be to eradicate child poverty. Now, I grew up in numerous housing estates between Brecon and Dundee, and you obviously seen the impact of poverty when you were growing up, and we know how rife it is right across society at the moment. We've tried to do what we can in Scotland to best mitigate child poverty. The Scottish Child Payment, 100,000 kids being taken out of poverty thanks to the measures that we've put in place. But most of the welfare powers, of course, sit in Westminster, and when SNP MPs are down there, when I'm down there, we'll be arguing for measures to be put in place to lift kids out of poverty. I think that's the right thing to do. It's how you transform lives, change society, and make the world a better place, and that's what all of us should be in politics for.
In Westminster, you do use a lot of your time at Prime Minister's questions to attack Labour rather than attacking the Tories.
Okay.
Why is it that you choose to attack Labour so much? You should be surely more aligned with Labour than the Conservatives.
Maybe because the Labour Party have lost their way a wee bit. I think in 3 weeks' time, Keir Starmer's going to be Prime Minister. The election's over, the Tories are finished. Everyone knows he's going to be in power, and I think it's right that we scrutinise their proposals now, as I've sought to do over the course of recent weeks and months, and also when they come into power, they need to be scrutinised and held to account for the things that they aren't going to do. And now, whether that's on international affairs like Gaza, where they seem to be reluctant to end arms sales to Israel despite the devastation that's being caused, whether that's on poverty, like I just mentioned, where they don't seem to have the political desire to end the two-child cap that would lift hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty right across these aisles, or whether it's on the economy and the common sense position to rejoin the European Union, to go back to freedom of movement so that we can all travel and work freely across Europe, or our businesses can access the European single market. We have different views and a different vision for Scotland, and I think it's fair that I hold those in power to account, and ultimately Keir Starmer's going to be in power very soon, and we can provide that strong voice.
Another man that plans to hold Labour to account is Nigel Farage, who says he's now the leader of the opposition.
Okay.
He reckons he could be Prime Minister in 5 years. How worried are you about that?
I could probably give you a wee flippant answer about Nigel Farage, but I think it's probably moved beyond that now. And I think we do have to take this very seriously. Now, for those of us in Scotland, we were once promised that Boris Johnson would never be Prime Minister. I think that was during the independence referendum campaign. Boris would never be Prime Minister. And then, of course, he went on to become Prime Minister. And, when it comes to Nigel Farage, we need to be bold and upfront and straightforward in saying that we reject their politics, that migrants are welcome. They're needed in Scotland to boost our public services. They contribute a huge amount to our communities and our social fabric. And this race to the right that we're seeing, with the Conservatives running after Nigel Farage and then the Labour Party chasing the Conservatives so that they all don't get outflanked by him, it needs to stop. They need to address the issues head on, say that what he is saying is not the truth. He is lying to people in the exact same way that he lied during Brexit. He said it was going to be all milk and honey, and ultimately 40 billion quid's worth of tax receipts are being taken out of the UK economy every year. It's not good enough. We need to stand firm. Progressive politicians who believe in the values of others and working together across society need to be firm, stand true to what they believe in, and reject Nigel Farage's politics, and ultimately reject the Reform Party at the ballot box too.
Would you like to see him achieve his goal of destroying the Tory party?
I don't want to see Nigel Farage achieve anything in political life. I mean, he's failed to be elected to Westminster on 7 occasions, I think it is. The project that he devoted his entire life to has been an utter disaster for businesses, for the public sector, for the economy, for the very fabric of our society. Brexit has been an unmitigated disaster. We should reject the lies of Nigel Farage, and we should promote politics which is inclusive, progressive, and looks to build build positive communities for the future. I don't think that's too much to ask for, but what it's going to require is politicians across all parties, be that the SNP, Labour, Lib Dems and beyond, to be willing to challenge him and take him head on. And I'm afraid that there's a reluctance, particularly amongst the Westminster parties, to do that because they're terrified about speaking about the benefits of migration, which of course is where Nigel Farage feels he can win some votes.
He says that this is the immigration election. The Labour and the Conservatives both think that migration is too high. What do you think?
So Scotland has a problem with migration, but our problem with migration is we don't have enough. We need more people coming to live and work in Scotland. If you go and speak to the universities in Scotland, they need international students, and the visa regulations that the UK government have put in place are devastating that sector, not just in Scotland, but right across the rest of the UK. If you go and speak to anyone who works in the energy sector, they need more people to be coming to live and work here to boost their business so that they can grow and trade and therefore boost the wider economy. And if you speak to anyone in the public sector, particularly in our health and social care system, they need more people to come and work in that sector because of the knock-on impact that has upon the NHS. This is where politicians need to deal in facts rather than right-wing populist rhetoric. And unfortunately, far too many politicians are scared to do that at the moment because for some reason amongst the Westminster status quo stability parties, they're terrified of Nigel Farage. I'm not scared of Nigel Farage. What worries me is his politics, and the best way to defeat them is to oppose them loudly and clearly.
A lot of people I've spoken to have raised concerns with first past the post. It's worked for you in Westminster. It's not the same in Scotland. What's your preferred system?
Yeah, so our party, the SNP, has had a long-standing position where we want to see proportional representation put in place. In a Westminster context, that would probably impact upon us. We wouldn't have had so many MPs since 2015 if that had been the case, but that's not stopped us arguing for it because it's the right thing to do. In the exact same way that it was right for us to argue for votes at 16, it's something which was introduced in the Scottish Parliament and is now going to be replicated by some of the major UK parties as well. Sometimes in politics it's about doing the right thing. Getting rid of first past the post would be doing the right thing, and it would make sure that we didn't have a Westminster system which frankly just doesn't work effectively.
And another thing lots of people are concerned about is trust in politics. Lots of young people are just not planning to vote in this general election. What's the SNP's pledge to young people?
Yeah, so I get it. I understand it. After the chaos of what they've seen at Westminster through Boris, through Brexit, through Liz Truss, there's a real apathy there. And, I kind of understand that because when I was growing up, it was the Iraq War and the public were against that. And yet Tony Blair and the Labour Party ran through with it anyway and did what they wanted to do despite the outcry. I decided to get involved in politics and to try and be the change because that was my response to that. And I guess my message to younger people would be the change. If you believe in something, go and vote for it. Go and make sure that what you believe in is listened to and acted upon by the political parties and hold them to account for that as well. And ultimately, do as I say, vote for what it is you believe in.
What is the SNP's stance on drug reform and in particular cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a pretty clear position for a long time now in Holyrood where we believe that drugs need to be treated as a public health measure rather than simply a criminal matter because the current status quo that we've had for decades now hasn't worked, and it's ingrained suspicion within the communities where drug use is rife rather than making sure that we have the proper public health support in place for people who need it. So that's our approach to drug use. It's one which is a pretty strong commitment. It is different from the Westminster parties. I think in time they'll eventually get to the point where they understand that you need to treat these things as a public health matter, and I think it would benefit wider society if they did so.
Lots of people in the UK feel after 14 years of Conservatives it's time for change. What do you say to people who say the same is the case in Scotland with the SNP?
I would say that we're just getting started. We've got a record of delivery where 100,000 kids are getting taken out of poverty. Young people don't pay tuition fees. We've got a clear agenda on delivering net zero so that we can combat the climate crisis while creating new jobs for the future. We've got a record to be proud of, 17 years of good work. That's a strong legacy. But ultimately, our work doesn't start and stop with winning elections. We want Scotland to be an independent nation so that we don't have to live by the decisions made in Westminster, an out-of-touch Westminster establishment which has taken us through Brexit and is ultimately going to take us through continued austerity. There's £18 billion worth of public sector cuts coming down the line that the Tories have accepted and the Labour Party as well have accepted. The IFS are calling it a conspiracy of silence. We reject that. We believe that it should be investment in public services, investment in the fabric of society so that we can build a better future for everyone. And on that basis, I would encourage folk to vote SNP at the election.
One final question, when can you get independence?
I would like to think that we could get independence, certainly a referendum, within the next 5 years. But ultimately, that's for the people of Scotland to decide. It's who they seek to have representing them at Westminster. Line 1, page 1 of our manifesto will say a vote for the SNP is a vote for independence. It's who we are. On top of course, putting forward policies in relation to the cost of living crisis and the challenge that we're facing, on top of the desire we want to have economic growth and an improved health service. We believe that Scotland's future should be in Scotland's hands, and the only way to make that happen is for the people of Scotland to vote for it.